Welcome to our event about education trends in Latin America and the Caribbean, evidence to inform the action. I am Mariana Cruz, and I'm the coordinator of the USAID Leading Through Learning Global Platforms LAC Regional Hub, and I will be your facilitator today. So this event is hosted by the LAC Regional Hub, which is part of the USA Leading Through Learning Global Platform. Besides this hub, this learning platform includes two other regional hubs, one in Africa and Washington, D.C., and three global learning networks, the Global Reading Network, GRN, the Education in Crisis and Conflict Network, ECCN, and the Higher Education Network, HELEN. In this occasion, the LAC Regional Hub is pleased to host the presentation of the USAID Summary of Analysis of Education Trends in LAC 2022 update. Our aim with this presentation is to share some LAC trends based on recent data, also to discuss the degree to which these trends resonate with all of you, education experts, practitioners, researchers, stakeholders, teachers, and students who are part of this regional community. And finally, to discuss related research that you are undertaking or are aware of that might respond to the gap identified in the development of this report. I would now like to introduce you to Michael Eastman of the USAID LAC Bureau, who will share with us the context for their commissioning of this summary analysis of education trends in LAC, which you can find linked in the chat box or by scanning the QR code that will show up on the next slide. Over to you, Michael, and welcome.
Thanks, Mariana, so much. It's really a pleasure to be here virtually today. To see so many old and new faces, friends and colleagues, and to share a little bit about what we're talking about here today. So we commissioned this report in the LAC Bureau of USAID with the goal of gathering information and data after the past couple of years, which of course are amongst the most challenging and paradigm shifting the education sector has ever gone through. And while the primary concern is, of course, how devastating the impacts are on the education system, participants, the students, the teachers, the families, the past several years have also set back decades of progress on educational measurement and analysis in the LAC region, which is one of the hallmarks of the region's educational advancement over the past half century or so. And so USAID's interest in this report in particular is in aggregating available data sets and reports, as well as having a geographical focus on USAID aid recipient countries, many of which are not included in all the regional analyses that focus on larger, higher income countries or those countries with more reliably available data sets. In particular, we asked the report authors to aggregate information on the impacts of COVID-19 on the education sector in LAC and to help us understand both what we know today and what we still do not know. I want to thank Dr. Jose Pineda and Dr. Carla Paredes of DevTech for their thoughtful approach to putting this report together for us, and to Melissa Chipeta, Nate Haight, and Jamie Salazar, as well as Avi Richmond from the USAID LAC education team for their important contributions to this final product. Finally, I want to thank Mariana and her team at the LAC Regional Hub of LTLGP for help putting on this event, and all of you for participating today and hopefully engaging in a thoughtful and productive discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Jose Pineda, Director of the Education, Gender, and Youth area at DevTech Systems. Dr. Pineda led the methodological design and the team of international researchers that collected and analyzed the secondary data for this study. Welcome, Jose. It's a pleasure to have you here, and over to you.
Thank you, Mariana, and thanks, Michael, for very grateful introductory remarks. This is, as it was said, is a joint effort for several experts, and I was privileged to lead the team, but that's a team effort. So let me start the presentation, if we can go to the next, just to give you a little bit of the background of what was our methodological approach. We tried to two main sources of information. We did a desk review all the secondary data resources from globally and publicly available databases like UNESCO, Institute for Statistics, or the World Bank Education Data Bank. Why? Because we wanted to have a database that was able to allow us to compare. So these global databases harmonize the data and allows for better cross-country comparison. But in addition to that, we did, as part of the desk review, a significant amount of research of different studies and reports that we could also synthesize and put together for this report. I think something that we wanted also to put an important focus, and you will see when you have the time to review the report, is that we divide the report into main sections. One is updating some of the analysis of educational trends that was done previously by the Bureau, and we try to update with the latest available information. But also, as Michael mentioned in his introductory remarks, we want also to have a focus on how the pandemic has affected the education sector in the region. So you will see that the report will have, let's say, more systematic kind of information for the trends, and given the recent amount of the events, we did kind of a case study for the impact of the COVID, trying to borrow from actually local information, national reports done by the ministers of education of the different countries. So let's go to the next slide, please. So let me we will have more time to discuss, but let me just very briefly summarize some of the main findings of the report. And I think one of the most important findings is that the report is benefiting from one of the very important achievements in the region, which is the significant improvements that we have made in terms of measuring and monitoring education access and quality in the region. I think that allows us to have all the richness of information that you will see on the report, and also includes, for instance, important variables like socio-emotional skills for the students, so that we could have a broader assessment of the situation of the educational system. I think that's important to mention because this is a trend that seems to be a little bit unique in the region. So when we have good news, it's also important to mention. You will see also part of the report will highlight some of the heterogeneities across the region, because, for instance, countries like Venezuela and Bolivia may not necessarily have as robust national assessment systems as the other countries, but in general, as a region, this is an important element. Two things that I wanted to mention before going to the next slide is that we found that in general, there has been some progress in several of the outcomes and elements that we measure in the report. The progress has not been as steep as we envisioned, but in general, some progress has been made. And also we observe a significant amount of the heterogeneity across countries in the region and across different let's say, social economic status or gender or, let's say, geographical location. That was one of the aims of the report, to try to collect as much as possible data on this, and I will discuss later on some of the elements that we found and some of the gaps that unfortunately we encountered during the report. So next, please. So I think the report is very interesting because it collects this initial idea that some progress has been made, maybe not as important or significant as we wish, but some progress was made, and the contrast with the significant impact that the pandemic has had in the region. And part of that significant impact is related to the way the region coped with the pandemic by having significant lockdowns. And that, if we count the number of days that schools were closed due to the lockdown policies to address the pandemic is close to one complete school year of closure. And that, of course, created a significant effect in the region. And scenarios like those developed by the World Bank that you see in the graph shows the potential significant impact that this is having in the region, where learning poverty could increase by 11.5 percentage points. So from a number that is already high, from 51% to a potentially 62.5%. So a lot of the children that are in a school age may either be out of the school system, or they are not able to read and understand a short passage that is dedicated to their age. So let me stop here and pause and give the floor to Mariana so that we can continue to the exchange. Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you for providing us with an insight of what is contained in this important document. We know that there are many several trends that can be analyzed and reviewed in the document itself. But at this moment, we will just focus on some of them so that we can have like an in-depth discussion with our participants today. Also, it is worth mentioning that the USAID summary analysis of education trends in LAC is informed by several organizations, practitioners, and research institutions aiming to identify innovative ways to respond to education gaps. It is not a document with the intention to provide any guidelines or recommendations, but rather a document that invite us to collaborate in finding solutions and best practices to overcome current education challenges in our region. Now, we will give you a pop quiz about 3 of the trends that we think might be of greater interest for our audience today. I'm going to ask the producer to launch 3 polls. They are going to be simultaneous, one after the other. Each of these polls is related to one of the education trends in LAC cited in the report. If you had a chance to read it or saw our LinkedIn post in the last weeks, you may know some of the answers because we gave you the answers in advance. So otherwise you need to follow us. So we ask you to answer based on your own knowledge, experiences, and perceptions. When you see the question appear on your screen, please just click on what you believe is the correct response. So please, thank you. There you go. Also, just in case, if it doesn't pop up, you might find that it is, you can click on the polls icon as well, and it will show up again. Was that enough time? Can we go to the results now? Yeah, I think we can launch the results. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, interesting, very interesting. So you were following us on LinkedIn. So for the first question, how many children of primary school age are currently out of school in LAC? 1.6 million, that's the correct answer, and that's what the majority of you responded. 84% of the people that responded to this one, that was right. Here, how many young women in LAC did not study or work in 2019? So the correct answer is 18 million. The majority chose 25 million. This is the total amount of young people who didn't work or study in 2019. But out of these 25 million, 80 million were women. And Jose is going to elaborate a bit more on this, which is really interesting. And there might be also some research gaps in understanding, like, because this may be a result of many factors, but I mean, this is an incorrect one, so So, but some of you, 33% responded correctly. And then at what average rate do men aged 25-29 complete tertiary education in our region? So the majority responded 14, then the second option was 35, but in fact, the correct answer is 5%, which it's again, very low, but I don't want to talk about this because Jose will provide us some of the findings that they were able to gather when developing this report. So if it's okay, Jose, I will pass it over to you again for you to share those findings and data.
Perfect. And I think that was an interesting way to engage and see how people could find some of these answers within by reading the report. So that's kind of the invitation. You will have a lot of questions. Hopefully, many of them could be found in the report. So what this slide is trying to highlight, I will say two things. One, these 1.6 million children out of school in LAC represents. Well, the first thing is to tell you is around 5%. And 5% of the entire children in school age is relatively, when you compare to other regions in the world, is a relatively low number. But in addition to that, I think we need to, which is something that we should somehow celebrate, that access in the region is something that we have made significant progress. But something also that I wanted to mention is that when we compare the trend over time in LAC with other regions, I think our line, the red one that you see in the graph, looks a little bit more flatter than in other regions. So it means that other regions are significantly making progress in increasing their access, in reducing the number of children out of school. And that's something that I want also to bring, that yes, this is a number that we should be happy about it, but other regions are also making significant progress, and we could also learn from whatever they are doing. So can we go to the next, please? And in addition, I think what is important is to show that there is significant heterogeneity across countries in the region with regard to this indicator, and countries like El Salvador, Panama, and Suriname are presenting almost double the percentage that is the average of the region. So in these countries, up to 10% of the children are out of school. So this highlights kind of this diversity within the region in terms of these outcomes. Next, please. The second is related to the second question. So the number of young people in the region that is neither studying nor working is 27.8 million, and almost 2/3 of those are young women. And I think that's an important aspect to show. Let's go to the next. Because there are interacting factors explaining this number. Let me just make a pause, because this chart has a significant amount of information, and I wanted to draw your attention to at least two ways to read the slide. The first is to show this heterogeneity across countries. You will see that in countries like Guatemala, Central American countries like Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Colombia, for instance, you see that there is a higher percentage of boys and girls in this situation, neither studying nor working, while in countries like, let's say, Uruguay, Peru, even Panama, these percentages are significantly lower. So that average that I gave you for the region has a lot of heterogeneity, and that's something that one message that I want you to use. The second message is the interaction between different layers of information that could signal compounding effects that affects a certain part of the population. One example, for instance, we see a clear divide between boys and girls. Girls tend to be the higher percentage, as we saw before, the 2/3. Now, when we see the rural-urban divide, that doesn't necessarily create a lot of effects across boys. So even in some cases, boys in rural areas tend to be, let's say, in a lower percentage, neither working or nor studying, for instance, the case of Paraguay or Peru. But when we see girls, is clearly a compounding effect from being a girl in a rural area, and that's something that is important for us to pay attention. So this figure not only highlights the importance of this heterogeneity, but the importance of having disaggregated data as much as possible. You will see that this has been a significant challenge for the region, but this figure illustrates the importance of having them because it allowed us to refine and to see what are the niche of potential action that could be masquerading a nice national average. Let's go to the next one. I think the last point that I wanted to make related to this point is, again, the importance of having different demographics and to allow us to cut the data so that we could have a better policy design to tackle the challenges that we're facing in terms of the gender gap. Can we go to the next? I think this is the last trend that I wanted to discuss with you, and is a trend related to completion of tertiary education. Here, for instance, in terms of gender, we see that women tend to have a significant higher percentage of completion rates than men. And again, we were fortunate to have information at least disaggregated by income status, and we see that that gap significantly increases as income increases in the population. That means that women that has more resources tend to excel even more than men, than those that are in the lower tier of the income groups. And that's an interesting feature for us to understand and analyze. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So I think what is important for us is to understand that these completion rates is a number based on those that decide to enroll. But we know that very few young people in the region continues from high school to higher education. So that's an issue that we need to consider, to study. And this is something that, again, having the correct data allowed us to design better policies. Let me pause here. I know it has been brief, but hopefully that is an invitation for you to continue reading the report. So Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose. This is so interesting, and it really invites us to go through the document in detail. I know you have already addressed it. I wanted to let you know that I was not paying attention to the LinkedIn post because I said the incorrect answer for the completion of tertiary education. It is in fact 14% versus the 5% that I said, but I think you explained it perfectly well now, Jose. And now that you have shared with us this information, we want to know whether these trends are true for you in your context. And we are asking you to know your reactions to these trends on a virtual notepad called Padlet. Probably some of you are familiar with it. Our producer now has added the link to the Padlet in the chat box. Yes, you can go directly there by clicking on the link. And you will find a column that presents one of the statistics of interest to you, and click on the white plus button at the bottom of that column. Write your reaction in the note. You can type yes, no, or partially in the bolded title or the post based on whether these trends resonate with you in your context. Then if it's possible, we would like you to offer more details in the unbolded text below, including what geographical context you are speaking from. Also, if you want, you can add a photo or video to your post. Those are resources that we will be very, very happy to share with our members. And when you are finished, you just need to hit publish in the top right of the post. If you feel inclined, you can add reactions to the other trends or comment, or a love to other posts as you read them. So we will give you a couple of minutes to enter all this information in in the Padlet, and then we will come back just to have a discussion with you. So please feel free to go directly to the link. I see some of you joining the Padlet. Also, what we can do, if you feel comfortable and you don't want to respond directly in the Padlet, please just raise your hand and you can turn on your mic so that we can start having a discussion here in the main room. Let me see if I see some hands here. So as you can see, so here are the instructions we have added here in the Padlet, these 4 trends. The one on increasing rates of primary student dropouts since COVID-19. Yeah, so you just need to, again, well, no, okay, there are some people already adding their comments here. Then more girls and women not studying or working as compared to boys and men. That's another trend. Yeah, great, thank you. Then low completion of tertiary education and growing popularity of private schools. That's an additional trend that we found really interesting happening in the LAC region. So, you just, some people are asking us, like, cannot answer in Padlet, does not accept click. Sylvia, if you feel comfortable, please, you can unmute yourself and share with us, like, what of these trends would resonate with you, with your context, or with the work you are doing also.
Thank you, Mariana. Yes, well, I think the first 2 are clearly something that resonate in my country, but the gender differences in Mexico favor girls, not boys, actually. Mm-hmm.
In access and completion, or yeah,
in access and completion and learning. 3.
Okay. And do you want to elaborate a bit more on that, Sylvia? ¿Alguna idea? You can answer in both English, Spanish, or Portuguese, as you feel comfortable.
No, bueno, la verdad es que el impacto del COVID ha sido sumamente notable en todo lo que tiene que ver con la deserción escolar y con la pérdida de aprendizajes. Y pues es sumamente preocupante porque es una tragedia educativa que si no se atiende, pues va a tener resultados y efectos generacionales, ¿no? Entonces eso es un problema. Y el asunto de las diferencias de género, pues es algo en lo que mi país cuando menos ha venido avanzando como muy consistentemente a lo largo de los años, de manera que pues incluso a nivel de educación superior ya hay un número mayor de niñas o mujeres jóvenes inscribiéndose en las universidades y, como digo, también completando, ¿no?
Buenísimo, muchísimas gracias, Silvia. Anyone else? Fabiola, please.
Hola, buenos días a todos. A pesar de que Guatemala hemos tenido algunos avances en términos de el acceso a la educación, uno de los problemas estructurales que afrontamos, que es un reto grandísimo, es la desnutrición infantil que afrontamos a nivel nacional. Es un problema estructural que requiere de un abordaje integral a nivel de todos los sectores. Tenemos casos de desnutrición que esto afecta directamente en los procesos de aprendizaje de los niños y las niñas y que se ve todavía en la parte de los jóvenes. Además, necesitamos reforzar lo que son las estrategias territoriales. Estamos trabajando mucho a veces en las ciudades y no estamos necesariamente atendiendo una estrategia territorial saliendo a las comunidades donde también los niños y las niñas no tienen acceso a una escuela y tienen que caminar por muchas horas para poder tener ese acceso. Y lo otro también se suma a los índices de violencia, ¿no? Y también la universalización de la educación es urgente. Tenemos un pensum de hace 20 años que no se ha hecho una revisión y esto lo que no permite es que haya una oferta y demanda con el mercado laboral. Entonces, estamos capacitando jóvenes en carreras que no necesariamente el mercado laboral está necesitando. Entonces, a pesar que hemos hecho muchos avances y que, por ejemplo, USAID ha hecho un enorme esfuerzo en Guatemala, que tenemos una estrategia bastante sólida, necesitamos trabajar sobre todo con los sectores de base, ¿no? Con las organizaciones sin fines de lucro, que son las que están constantemente en el terreno, para poder garantizar estos servicios y generar estrategias a largo plazo y que sean sostenibles, sobre todo en el tiempo, ¿no? Tanto en la parte de efectividad y eficiencia. Entonces, estas cifras son sumamente importantes para nosotros, porque esto nos permite revisar de nuevo las estrategias para los próximos 3, 4 años y realmente dirigir estas estrategias en base a la evidencia, que son los datos que ustedes nos están ahorita proporcionando. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Fabiola. Muy interesante la intervención porque además creo que toca muchos puntos, sumamente relevantes en todos los contextos, ¿no? Tanto en el ámbito urbano, rural o en cualquier otro contexto, incluso contextos de migración. Acá leí algunos comentarios interesantes, ahí no puedo hacerle, aquí lo voy a hacer. Decía, por ejemplo, well, I will read it in English as it is in English. Particularly, it's regarding low completion of tertiary education. It says, particularly a reality in Nicaragua as well, especially with a significant rise in migration. Certainly, this number will change significantly, but not for the best. I don't know who from Nicaragua, if you want to elaborate a bit more. I think there are many situations going on in the region, such as migration as well. Sorry, switching to Spanish very briefly. La desnutrición, el contexto urbano, rural, cómo hay que ir adaptando algunos modelos de enseñanza-aprendizaje. Entonces, creo que son de vuelta, es multifactorial lo que está sucediendo en la región y hay cuestiones que uno puede tener una clara idea de cuál es la tendencia, pero después hay como particularidades de cada contexto que se tienen que analizar. José, no sé si quieres agregar algo acá.
Well, I was just also using the chat to communicate with Fabiola and Silvia, but in general, I think it is very important to have this approach of disaggregating the data as much as possible, because there are different aspects and different drivers and socioeconomic factors, and as was mentioned by Fabiola, several of them are key drivers of these trends. So definitely our challenge is not just to report the aggregate number, but the underlying root causes of it, so that we could inform policy. In terms of the work that we are doing under this LAC contract support, we are also trying to understand some of the root causes of dropouts, so that we understand why a few number of students in the region do the transition to higher education. We are also trying to understand the role of faith-based education as one of the biggest part of the market in terms of the private sector provision of private education. So in general, I think the work is hard because there are a lot of nuances. The region has this combination of high inequalities in the world when you compare to others that imprint in all of the aspects related to education, and it's kind of a dual causality, because these inequalities creates interactions that perpetuates problems with access or the quality of education that then leads to higher inequality. So understanding these factors, these elements is key for us to better design, to better connect to the policies that are needed in the region.
Yeah, wonderful, Jose. So I would love to go through some of these comments, because it's like there are very interesting a contribution from our participants. So I will start on the left, increasing rates of primary students dropout, and we can have just a brief discussion about this one. One of the participants says that, for example, in here, but the statistics tool we have, which I found interesting, we have to measure dropout are inadequate to represent the continuity of learning during the pandemic. So that's one comment. And then, well, in Chile, for example, studies have found that children are not attending school after the pandemic. So when lockdowns were, you know, up, like they just didn't go back to school. This is an alarming trend that set us back in regard of access and quality of education. There are like youth are disenchanted with education. Many don't see the point as it doesn't necessarily lead to jobs. That's, you know, another concern. There is one from Haiti. A heartbreaking dropout case is that a lot of those who go do not complete the school year because of the fees and end up losing the year and starting over in a different school. Then there is like a longer comment here in Mexico. Switching to Spanish, please. Observamos que en comunidades rurales aledañas a un estado en México existe un importante número de jóvenes que han decidido no regresar a sus estudios de secundaria. Las razones son el acceso difícil, falta de transporte, caminos seguros, desmotivación escolar, falta de incentivos a nivel familiar, jóvenes obteniendo beneficios económicos de corto plazo en trabajos precarios, poniendo en riesgo su futuro laboral y de inserción. And I see here also some comments from Marcela as well. Please, if you want to unmute yourselves and share with us some of these thoughts. Also, Miriam from Haiti, another contextual complex humanitarian challenge is the increased level of food insecurity and the need for school lunch to tackle dropouts. So I invite you, Jess, to open your microphones and share with us. Please just raise your hands. I don't know if you, Miriam from Haiti, you want to share a little bit more with us? Or...
Thank you, Mariana. I apologize for coming in late, but definitely those first two, they highly resonate because we are in a context of a complex humanitarian crisis that's been worsening for the past 4 years. So the reality is that when we had COVID, we started noticing an increase in the dropout because the socio-economic situation in Haiti is that a very high percentage of the education cost is something that is supported by the remittances that Haitians are getting from their families abroad. And we all know how those families have been impacted by the COVID globally, those who lost their jobs. So since that early 2020 up to that complex crisis that we've been having for the last 3 years. So it's just kept getting worse because now we're in a different environment with the generalized violence especially for areas that are controlled by gangs. And we also have the migration that is also a consequence of the situation. So now basically I think that schools are timidly reopening since a week and a half, but we already anticipate that the recurring situation where, because of the social and economic situation, a high percentage of families end up sending their kids in January as opposed to September or October, which is the usually opening date. So what we know is going to happen is that because of the level of food insecurity, families are going to have to make an even more difficult choice between eating every day and sending the kids. And that's something that is going to be added to the recurring situation. It's like a vicious cycle because the families do not really have a lot of money. So when they send them in January, and by the time a lot of schools accept them on credit. So by the time they reach the end of the year, it's time for them to take their final exams. but they're not allowed to take it because they have a balance. So what happens is that they end up losing that year. The family has to make another choice the year after to send them to school. And because they don't have a report that shows they completed the year, so they go to a second year, they have a debt somewhere, and then they start the cycle all over again. So in the end, they keep increasing in the system. They don't have money, and less, and fewer of them are basically going. This year is just basically going to be a disaster. So over time, you're going to see more and more dropouts. So now when you add the migration because of the internal displacement of a lot of the segments of the populations, in addition to a very high percentage of repatriation of Haitians from the Dominican Republic.
Right.
So you cannot begin to imagine what the situation is, but definitely the trends are going to keep going down and not improving, not in the near future, not this year anyway.
Yes, thank you very much, Mariana. And I think that may also resonate with many other contexts in the Caribbean and also in some other countries in our region. We need to move forward, but there are some questions. There is a question for the DevTech. José, ¿considerarán ustedes en las tendencias que la pandemia agudizará estos problemas? ¿Piensan abordarlo en el análisis de tendencia? And there is also one, because we were listening to Fabiola about the impact of early adolescent pregnancies, for example, or early pregnancies. And there is here Hugo, high school students' pregnancy rates went down in Argentina. This is interesting. Just, also as an innovative solution or just as an educational strategy by means of an intense campaign on sex ed and provision of contraceptives. So I think every context has different ways to respond or to tackle these challenges. But yeah, we really appreciate your contributions here on the Padlet. And yeah, we apologize for not being able to address them all at this moment. So just to move forward, let me just I will pass it again over to you, Jose, so that you can talk to us about the research implications, please, and then we can continue our discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Mariana, and thanks for the rich discussion. Let me just take 30 seconds to make a couple of comments related to some of the aspects, and it's related to current work that we are doing now. First, in the report, in the section related to COVID, we do have kind of an analysis of the potential impact that COVID had in the region related to the previous trends that you see. It is a little bit early to have access to data that is harmonized and comparable across all the countries, but there is a significant effort to try to understand how the pandemic affected the trends that we just discussed. So definitely in the report, you will find our best effort to address this. In addition to all the factors that has been mentioned, I'm happy to announce also that throughout the support with the LAC Bureau of USA, we are also exploring to bring elements of behavioral economics to understand how not only these core elements that have been mentioned and that really important needs to be addressed, but how can we use some of these behavioral economics aspects as the example that was probably mentioned in the case of Argentina, that can be with some educational aspects or some, let's say, soft engagement help the more, let's say, hardcore policies that we need to put resources here and there. So I think the Bureau is trying to explore these different options of policy, and we are happy to support and to work on these exciting areas because the challenges, as you all are saying, are significant. So let's go to the next slide, because I think it is an important moment for us to make a pause and say, well, the research that we did face, I think, significant gaps, and I want to highlight two, which I think are very important. One is that, as you saw, for instance, in the example that we gave in terms of the the proportion of children that are neither working nor studying, that the average for the region is 5%. But when you see the significant heterogeneity across countries and within a country, even by gender or by geographical location, it makes us to be more, let's say, eager to have this kind of data and this kind of disaggregation. Unfortunately, is not necessarily the case that we have availability of this kind of data disaggregated by a significant amount of components. And we have even not mentioned an important component, which is the disaggregation by people with disabilities. So definitely, this is a significant gap. We know the usefulness, we know the importance, so we need to keep pushing our statistical offices to keep collecting data and to get this kind of disaggregation that is basic for policy making. The second important gap is that more, let's say, structured data ended mostly for most of the countries in the school year of 2019. And we know that that prevents us from capturing the pandemic in a more systemic way. So what you see in the second part of the report is an attempt to go to local sources, to go to ministries, to see the reports, to see studies done at the local level. So this is another challenge, that the frequency in which data is collected at the educational level prevent us from capturing these events that happen at a higher frequency. So we need to have a system of information that is more agile and help us to navigate these events. So Mariana, let's go back to you again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jose. So now we want to tap into your knowledge to fill the gaps, these gaps that Jose has just shared with us. So what research or projects do you know about that might fill some of these gaps? It's important just to limit ourselves to a specific gap, because we know that there will be always gaps, but at the same time, there are lots of research studies out there that have not necessarily been disseminated. So in that sense, I think we also, as you know, as part of this community, if you know of anything and you want to share that with the members, that would be great. So please go to the chat box now to add any links or to any documentation or web pages that might help us to better understand what is happening throughout our region. If you have any type of resources, again, links that you would like us to share with the members, and also to, to share with DevTech in case they want to continue with this analysis as well. And also, if you want to just get in touch with them directly or with us, that would be great. So please feel free to write down all this information on the chat as we move along. We can give you 1 minute no, just to go grab some resources if you have them handy, or otherwise we can just continue our conversation very briefly. So yeah, here, so there is some people are sharing here. Yes, the presentation is available in both. We can share with you both links of the presentation in English and Spanish. Here there is some resources and links that you are sharing with us. Thank you very much. We'll gather them and we'll send them out with a follow-up email in the coming days. And please continue, if you want to continue adding some reflections into the Padlet as well, or you just want to reach out to us directly to share PDFs or any sort of resources, that would be great as well. Okay, so thank you very much for, let me see, because I cannot. Yeah, wonderful. Those the links to the presentations, and then some comparative studies from CERCE, TERCE, and ERCE from UNESCO. Some other links. Thank you for these contributions, and also we would like, I don't know if you consider that this is something that, or there are any other relevant topics that you would like us to address in the LAC Hub, please feel free also to share that information on the chat, or again, just go off mute and share with us like what would be some of the topics that you would like us to address, or that we can partner with you as our member to address them in the coming year. As we were mentioning, we will also share all these links with you in the follow-up message from our event. So now, what themes might we want to consider for an eventual LAC Hub research agenda or sharing knowledge events? Please, you can also add your thoughts now into the chat box. Like if you consider that there is something, we know that from the LAC region, there is a lot of interest in early childhood development, specifically in some sub-regions within our very large and heterogeneous region. There is also a lot of interest about employability, how we can, partner with the private sector to adapt ourselves, or to just understand what are the main needs at this moment to help young people get unemployment. Like there are many things going on, so please feel free to share your thoughts on the chat about these future knowledge sharing events for the USA LAC Regional Hub. I'm trying to read all of your comments now. Thank you okay. Yes, we will be sharing all the links. Thank you, Carla, for sharing the emails. I think if you want also to continue this conversation with the researchers, with Jose, with whom we had the privilege to invite today to this event, and who was very kind to present a very concise summary of what of these 3 trends among the many more that are in the report. Please feel free to reach out to them directly, or you can also reach out to us, and we'll make that linkage as well. So as we are moving on, I will turn it back to Jose to offer a summarized version of his concluding remarks, if that's okay. Jose, we have a couple more minutes, so please, the floor over to you.
Thanks, Mariana. Let me just, it's me changing a little bit the script, but I wanted to switch to Spanish because, I'm a Spanish speaker, so it's kind of unnatural having an audience with a lot of Spanish speakers and continue to speak in English. So please, switch if you want to hear the translation. So, quiero simplemente concluir. Lo primero es agradeciendo de verdad que la oportunidad que nos dio el Bureau de trabajar en un reporte tan interesante como este, de los organizadores de este evento, de este seminario, que ha sido muy enriquecedor para nosotros. Veo que nos están poniendo materiales nuevos que podemos revisar, un webinar ayer que nos dicen en el chat que obviamente vamos a revisar los resultados con mucho interés. Y realmente creo que lo importante del estudio es que primero se pudo nutrir con información más o menos reciente por el hecho de que hemos avanzado en la región mucho en la medición del acceso y la calidad, y eso es importante reconocerlo. También el reporte nos dice que todavía quedan muchos retos por superar y hay muchos vacíos que llenar. Uno de esos vacíos muy importante es el acceso a data que nos permite identificar grupos vulnerables que nos permitan diseñar mejores policies, mejores políticas. Y fíjense que las políticas nosotros creemos que también tiene que verse desde un punto de vista más holístico, donde nosotros tenemos elementos, si se quiere, más tradicionales, sino elementos de economía conductual que nos pueden ayudar con campañas educativas o con presentar la información de una manera distinta, el lograr que la conducta que hagan los agentes sea la que queremos para mejorar en el tema educativo. Nosotros estamos muy preocupados por el efecto que la pandemia ha tenido en la educación, en general en la región, pero como estamos hablando del sector educativo en particular, creemos que si bien no tenemos como una data muy dura, aunque vamos a revisar los reportes que nos han dicho de manera más reciente, sí vemos que los escenarios que se manejan muestran que la región puede ser una de las más afectadas en términos de la pobreza de conocimiento o de aprendizaje. Y eso es algo que para nosotros es alarmante. Recordemos que la pobreza de aprendizaje tiene dos componentes. Uno, los niños que no están en la escuela, los cuales en algunos casos nos compartieron que en muchos países los niños no quieren regresar después de la pandemia. Pero el otro componente que también es importante considerar es los niños que están yendo a la escuela, pero que no están aprendiendo suficiente y que por ende se consideran estar en situación de pobreza de aprendizaje. Entonces, el reporte tiene mucha información que esperamos que les sea útil, tiene una información de unas tendencias más sistemáticas hasta el 2019 y después hace un intento por tener información que nos dé luces del impacto que la pandemia ha tenido. De verdad que muchísimas gracias a todos por su atención y a los organizadores por darnos el espacio para poder compartir de manera breve los resultados y los invitamos a que lean el reporte. Gracias, Mariana. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. So as we close, I want to thank Michael, again, Michael Eastman and Jose, your team from DevTech. I would also like to thank the LAC Regional Hubs team and the LTLGP team, who some of them have joined us today as well. Here again is the link to download this important reference document that's being shared, yes, on the screen. And next year, we'll be working with our members to support knowledge exchange through events, workshops, and professional development opportunities. So we invite you to stay in touch. So, and also to stay informed, you can follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our LAC Regional Hub listserv. You can scan the QR codes or click on the chat box links, sorry. And well, that's it for today. Just a final reflection. It's super important for us to take local problems and initiatives to collectively create, build, and transform the education of our region. So we are very grateful for having joined us today, and to all the DevTech team and the USAID LAC Bureau for this wonderful work that is being done through this report. Thank you, gracias, and yeah, see you soon.